This is the Automotive Repair Podcast Network.
Welcome to another episode of Speak Up Effective Communication, the show on the Automotive Repair Podcast Network, focused on elevating our communication and our leadership skills. I'm your host, Craig O'Neill, and in our episode today, there's a question that comes up regularly in this industry, and I want to address it head on, even as the principles related to it have been actually hitting me sideways, thanks to some reading lately. The question is, should your automotive repair facility be open on Saturdays or Sundays or 7 days a week in general? The economic argument for it seems pretty straightforward. More days open means more days of revenue opportunities, and I understand that. I'm not dismissing it, but I've been sitting with this topic for a little over 2 months now, and I want to tell you where I land, not by teasing a 4-day work week or not by prescribing a particular weekend policy. I want to spend this episode sharing the ideas I've been reading on and thinking about, because they arrived with what I can only call uncanny timing, and altogether they make a case for why the idea of the weekend is, for lack of a better word, sacred. We'll be talking about it in economic terms as well as historical as well. Before we get into it, we have a word of the day. The word of the day is synchrony. We'll define that word for you after we hear a word from our sponsors who make this show possible. Hey friends, as you know, I'm a proud member of the AutoFlow team, and let me tell you, we've changed how business is done for auto shops everywhere. We support your client experience before, during, and after the work is done. Imagine this: timely updates sent directly to your clients, branded digital vehicle inspections, and seamless communication from start to finish. That's why shops love AutoFlow. And hey, with those 5-star reviews rolling in, you'll wonder how you ever managed without us. Take an important next step and take your auto shop to the next level. Visit www.autoflow.com. Get on board with an AutoFlow trial. Want to see your auto repair shop thrive? Are you looking to drive more customers to your auto repair shop? Let ShopDog Marketing be your guide. Our customer-first approach, combined with AI-driven creative content, ensures top rankings. Dominate mobile first and voice search with our specialized expertise. Reach out to ShopDog Marketing today and start growing your business. Don't miss out on this chance to boost your business. Visit shopdogmarketing.com. Inbound has exclusively served independent auto repair shops with expert communication solutions for years. Our robust VoIP platform ensures you stay connected while our industry-leading AI analytics take your business to the next level. We provide the tools you need to understand your customers and optimize every interaction. Choose Inbound for proven expertise and unmatched innovation. Visit callinbound.com and discover the difference we can make. What if you knew exactly what to say to the price shopper, the upset customer, the person who says they cannot afford it? Every day, service advisors lose customers not because of bad service, but because of the wrong words at the wrong moment. Words That Work is a free phone scripts playbook built for auto service professionals. Every script includes the reasoning behind it, so you understand not just what to say, but why it works. Grab your free copy at serviceadvisortraining.com. Okay, we're back, and the word of the day is synchrony. That is a noun, and that is the state of occurring or existing at the same time. Makes sense. It's from the Greek syn, S-Y-N, syn, which means together, and chronos, which means time. So, together time. Synchrony is not merely simultaneity, simultaneousness. It's a tricky word. Should be the word of the day. It carries an idea of shared time, time that belongs to a group rather than an individual. Now, a lot of people would say that the weekend question is pretty simple to resolve. If shops open on the weekends, if you're open on Saturdays, you just stagger your staff, rotate the schedule. Everyone still gets their days off, just not on the same days. It seems pretty fair on paper, but I want to push on that a little bit, because because I think the staggering solution addresses the individual schedule while missing something a little bit larger. Now, for the record, I'm 43, well, nearly, and I remember the weekends of my childhood, Sundays especially. Like no one would mow their lawn without catching the ire of the neighbors. Few businesses were open. Restaurants were really hit or miss. And that is not the norm anymore. And I do not think we lost that accidentally. I think the pace of our world has decided that those are days where productivity can happen. And here we are. But let's look at this with an economic term. Economists have a category called a network good. A network good is something whose value comes almost entirely from shared participation. The telephone is a classic example of this. One telephone is worthless. Two telephones connected to each other is really pretty cool. But when most of the people you know have a telephone, well, the value of yours multiplies dramatically. And the internet works the same way for the same reason. It's a network effect. And I came across this term when a journalist named Alex Mayasi, writing for The Hustle, it's a newsletter that I read periodically anyways, he was drawing on the work of sociologists that he quoted, which was Christopher Young and Shayun Lim. And they make a case that the weekend is under threat. Alex Mayasi is specifically making that case, and he called it the weekend itself as a network good. And the whole point is your day off is not simply a function of how many hours you are resting, saying its value depends on whether the people around you are also off at that time. And this short article touched on a few historical cases. It really launched me into a reading frenzy, actually, on related topics. So there'll be a little bit more on that later as I go into the topic more and my reaction to it. And if you're into this topic, please look up the article. Mayasi's article is titled "Why Weekends Are Under Threat." He has a brilliant little bit in his article about what he calls Schrodinger's Saturday, too, which I think is hilarious because I once did a little blog myself referring to Schrodinger's car. For any of you that don't know the story of the thought experiment of Schrodinger's cat, you're going to want to look into that. Definitely into the weeds topic. We can't go there right now, although I would love to. It'd be a good conversation to have with someone like Matt Fonz, though he'd go in those weeds. But yeah, he's too busy diagnosing cars, I think. Hopefully not on Saturday or Sunday. All right. The study that was referenced in the article that I want to touch on a little bit more is the one by Young and Lim. And this drew on 2 independent data sets, more than 500,000 respondents, according to the research I was doing on this. They compared the weekend emotional well-being, like how happy people are on the weekends, with employed people against people who are unemployed. Let's see how that goes, right? What they found is that both group experience nearly identical gains in well-being on weekends. The unemployed look forward to Saturday just as much as people who worked all week. And if you're like me, you're going to push back on any of this type of research that you read, because my initial impulse on this was say, well, yeah, of course, the unemployed person feels better on the weekends. Like that guilt or shame that you might feel when you're unemployed is going to lift as well, because everyone else is off too, and you just don't feel bad about not working when other people are also not working. So they no longer feel out of step with the world. And then as I'm even trying to combat this logic with that thought, I realized, oh, wait, maybe that's still kind of part of it that's proving this point, because either way, you have just proved the point. Whether the weekend feels better because you finally have company or because you no longer feel like the odd one out, the value of that day is still coming entirely from the fact that you're doing what everyone else is doing. Young and Lim put it rather plainly. They said the weekend well-being is not due to time off work per se, but is, and I'm quoting them directly on this, a collectively produced social good stemming from widely shared free time on weekends. A collectively produced social good. The unemployed person has all the time in the world. Every day is technically a day off. It probably isn't literally that, of course, job hunts, all the things, I get it. But yet they still cannot manufacture a good Tuesday out of nowhere, not because they're not resting, it's because the network is not there. Interesting. And that is the problem with staggering. And it's by no means malicious, and people may pick and choose that because they prefer it too. So I'm not trying to take any of that away, but it solves the individual schedule while breaking or potentially breaking the network. Your team member has their day off. They just do not have that day off with anyone else in some cases. And that's, if that's not a problem for the individuals, I would say that, well, maybe it is still a problem. Now, let me tell you, I felt a rather peculiar version of this in my recent travels, where I was literally on a different day of the week than my family back home. Because I'm talking about my overseas trip. I was visiting my friends, Jack's Tires and Auto, and I got the S in there, guys. It's tires, more than one. Look, being in a completely different hemisphere from my family, this is a 14-hour time difference from Eastern, and it's easier to remember. I use a little website. It's called Time Buddy. It's got a cool little chart that lays the hours of each day across in a row. Really useful if you ever have to do work with people in different time zones that are more than 1, 2, 3, or 4 hours difference. When I was in Australia, my family was 2 hours ahead of me, a day behind. It's a horrible way to memorize this, but it made sense to me and it stayed true. But bottom line, my 6 a.m. when I was on Sydney time, it was their 4 a.m. So 8 a.m. in the morning, and I'm starting the work day in Australia, they're having dinner at 6 p.m. back home. And it was the other way around. When I was in the evening hours, it's about 9 p.m. That was about that 7 o'clock hour, and my kids are getting ready to head out the door. So I'm winding down for my night. They're starting their day. When I wake up, they're ending their day with dinner. It was very interesting. It is not something I experienced. I was over there during Mother's Day, and so I was experiencing Mother's Day from it. By the way, and this is true, I was the first of my siblings to text my mother Happy Mother's Day on Mother's Day by a significant many hours, I will add. Yeah, it was totally still Saturday back home when I was experiencing Sunday. But look, it was just a really interesting example of this because my family is my closest element of my network. And when we're literally on different days and different, even major chunks of our experiences day to day, is a very different feeling, even going, of course, through a holiday as we did. And it made a lot more sense to me. I was researching this topic before that trip and sitting with this still for a while, and then experienced this. And actually, when I sat down to record this episode is when I was thinking, oh, yeah, actually, I have a built-in example from that experience right here. So kind of a fun experience, at least, because it wasn't too long. It wasn't too long. Right? Now, while we're thinking overseas, I want to keep that overseas mindset. We're going to tip back to the Northern Hemisphere. We're going to go way back in time, way, way back, not like a day back. We're going back 1929 to a gentleman, well, not really a gentleman, just a man named Joseph Stalin, who introduced to the Soviets a term, and I'm probably going to get this pronounced totally wrong because it's a dead word, I think, but naprevika. It was in that article from Alex in the hustle there, but naprevika. It's the continuous work week. It was constant work, basically. It was an industrial logic that was at the time for them, I guess, rather compelling. Workers were divided into 5 groups. Each of them were assigned a different color-coded day off. On any given day, 4/5 of the workforce showed up to the factory while 1/5 stayed home. It was just 5-day weeks. It was no longer a 7-day week. They had 5-day weeks. Pretty wild. Totally worth looking into if you're into history. And yeah, so on any given day, 4/5 of the workforce show up to the factory, 1/5 stayed home. The machines never stopped. Production never paused. It was shift work on the most enormous scale in human history. And from the very beginning, the workers hated it. Letters were published in the Pravda. That's the official newspaper of the Communist Party at the time. And there were complaints almost immediately. One read, "What is there for us to do at home if our wives are in the factory, our children at school, and nobody can visit us? It is no holiday if you have to have it alone." Another asked, "How are we to work now if mother is free on one day, father on another, brother on a third, and I myself on a fourth?" And now here's the part that should get the attention of anyone who runs a facility with equipment. All of you. The machines suffered too. Constant use without shared downtime proved damaging. And because the responsibility for maintenance was staggered across rotating groups, nobody felt ownership over the equipment they were running. Classic case, really, of how shared responsibility became no responsibility. And the historical accounts from the period note shared responsibilities often meant no one taking ownership of their work tasks to deleterious effect. And here's where I want you to notice something about the stated goal of Neprevika. I think I got that right. And we're going to do some other Russian words here in a minute, too. This is kind of fun topic. The ostensible reason was economic, but the deeper intention was also theological. The Soviet government hoped that by eliminating a shared Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, that religious adherence would become near impossible. Muslims, Jews, Orthodox Christians alike could not easily attend services if those days had been rendered meaningless. And you have to consider the language itself. This is where, like, communication topics for me, it always comes down to language in so many cases. And the Russian word for Saturday is sobota, and that is from the word Sabbath. And the word for Sunday is even more interesting. The word for Sunday, and I'm going to try my best on this pronunciation, I've worked on it a few times, Voskresenia. It's Russian for resurrection, so literally resurrection day. The word for that they use for Sunday is literally the word for raising from the dead. So Stalin was not just trying to keep the machines running. He was trying to make those words mean nothing. And he did not succeed. Russians still say Voskresenia every week. And what I find fascinating is that one of the most powerful industrial states in the world spent years trying to erase a rhythm that is embedded in their own language. And Stalin did not succeed. By 1931, 2 years in, he had already reversed course, acknowledging that the experiment had been hasty. By 1940, the traditional 7-day week with a shared day of rest was fully restored, and the most powerful industrial state in the world, with total authority over its workforce, could not engineer away the shared rest day. Whew. That's interesting. And that brings us to a question we're sitting with for a moment. Why? Why did something as simple as a shared day off prove more durable than Stalin's entire industrial apparatus? Now, this is where I get to go into further reading. This is kind of where, like, even this topic, diving into the history, thanks to that article, sent me to another history book that I've read multiple times now. Durability is worth asking about. Why would a 7-day rhythm with a shared rest day survive millennia across wildly different cultures? And to answer that question, I want to bring in a historian named Thomas Cahill. I've mentioned him before. Cahill spent much of his career writing a series called The Hinges of History, and each volume is dedicated to a civilization or people or period whose ideas permanently bent the trajectory of Western thought. Now, it's not religious history explicitly, though I have to add that faith does run through it in the first 3 volumes. First 3 volumes are awesome. How the Irish Saved Civilization, my namesake, I love that. The next one is The Gifts of the Jews. And then the third book is The Desire of the Everlasting Hill. And then it goes into the Greeks and medieval time. And it's fantastic. Unfortunately, for those of you interested in history and might be familiar with this author, it's very unfortunate. Thomas Cahill died in 2022 before he could finish his series. I think there's a lot to come yet through the industrial era in his works. But here's the thing. Cahill reads like an excavation of the moments where the world started thinking differently and never went back. And I recently picked up the second volume after reading about the Neprevika cases here, which I was talking about. And so you can see this right now, how newsletter leads to history, leads to other history books, and this is what, when you read a lot, this is what will happen. So the second volume, again, is The Gifts of the Jews. The subtitle for that book is How a Tribe of Desert Nomads Changed the Way Everyone Thinks and Feels. Quite a busy subtitle there that says a lot about what kind of book that's going to be. And Cahill's argument is directly relevant to what we're talking about today. Cahill argues that the ancient world experienced time fundamentally cyclical, seasons repeated, harvests repeated. History did not actually go anywhere. It just came back around again. And into that world, the Hebrews introduced something completely different: linear time. Time with a direction, a beginning, a destination, and embedded in that understanding was the Sabbath. Not a rest day that the economy permitted, but one that was declared into the structure of creation itself. This is before Israel existed as a nation, before there was a labor force to manage. And Cahill notes that this was radically democratizing. In surrounding cultures, you have to think about this. Laborers, servants, even animals used for labor had no equivalent rhythm of shared rest until that time. So the Sabbath was a declaration that human beings do not exist primarily to produce. So poetically, the Old Testament has another unique thing here, the Psalms. Psalm 92 is, interestingly, the only psalm with a designated title, and that title is A Song for the Sabbath Day. And believe it or not, that is a psalm that was being discussed with a small group from my church, you guessed it, while I was researching this topic. These things just turn into a bigger thing all the time. It feels like this. I love it when it feels like this sometimes, like things are just put in front of me. Like, all right, let's think about this for a while. So in fact, the initial draft for this episode was actually a list of notes that I had from all the sources I cited that I could bring to that discussion with my small group. I even had it loaded on my remarkable tablet, completely ready to rock for that particular meeting. But the Psalm does not merely call the people in Israel, of course, at the time, to rest. It calls them to reorient toward gratitude, toward perspective, toward something larger than their own output. The image it gives for the righteous is a cedar of Lebanon, slow growing, deep rooted, still bearing fruit in old age, not the grass that flourishes quickly and is cut down. Really, really great visuals. So brings me back. What Mayasi found with his network good analysis is therefore, I feel, quite real. But I think what he was hinting at in his recent article is really, it's the shadow of something much, much older. The network effect that economists observe is, in my point of view, just modern language applied to a deliberate foundation. So, what does this mean for how you run your facility, or what you may look for when you join a facility? I'm not telling you what days to be open or to work. It's a business decision. It's yours to make. But I am asking you to make it with full awareness of what I feel is at stake. I do feel that when you stagger your team across 7 days, you are making a choice about whether certain people on your team get to participate in a broader network, whether they have synchrony or just the individual hours off. Economically and experientially, individual hours are worth considerably less, even for you introverts among us. The mechanical specialists in your facility also are not machines, and neither are you. And I think it's nice to remember that even the Soviet Union, even Stalin learned that. So, hey, I hope this is an interesting topic to you. If it sends you down a reading rabbit trail, it makes me really happy. And I appreciate hearing from you on anything that helps, or suggestions on topics that you'd like to hear us discuss more on the show that will help you on your communication journey. And let me be clear, if you are involved in a debate in your repair facility and you cite this episode and call someone suggesting a 7-day work week, suggesting they're like Stalin, please don't. Actually, wait. Please do. Say something more tactfully, though. Say, hey, you know who else thought it'd be great to have a work day every day, Stalin. Then reach out to me here on the show. Email me right here, speakup@craigoneil.net. And I want to hear all about how that conversation went from right there. craigoneil.net. That's O'Neill, Oneill. speakup@craigoneil.net. Please email me that story. Please. I will make my whole day. And remember, please listen up on the app to all the shows on the Automotive Repair Podcast Network. Remarkable Results Radio with Carm Capriato, Diagnosing the Aftermarket A through Z with Matt Fonslow, Business by the Numbers with Hunt Demarest, the Auto Repair Marketing Podcast with Brian and Kim Walker, and the Weekly Blitz with Coach Chris Cotton. And thank you again to our sponsors, AutoFlow, Call Inbound, Shop Dog Marketing, and Service Advisor Training.com. We really appreciate you making this show possible. I get to research and bring these topics to you. Thank you for joining me and listening to these topics that I hope you find as interesting as I do. Get out there, listen up, speak up, and rest up. And hey, please stay tuned. Next episode will be episode 100 on the podcast. Very excited. And I think you'll have a good time talking with some guests that I'm excited to talk to. You'll see why.
You've been listening to Speak Up, Effective Communication with Craig O'Neill on the Automotive Repair Podcast Network. Download our exclusive podcast app at automotiverepairpodcastnetwork.com because the best conversations in the industry start here. Check the show notes for Craig's YouTube channel and email. Let him know what topics you'd like him to speak up about.